It's Miss Alfred here to read you your next chapters of Wonder. This one's called Voices in the Dark. Finally, after what seemed like forever of running, someone yelled, "I think we lost him." "Amos?" "I'm right here," said Amos's voice a few feet behind us. "We can stop," Miles yelled from farther up. "Jack!" I yelled. "Whoa," said Jack, "I'm here. I can't see a thing." "Are you sure we lost them?" Henry asked, letting go of my arm. That's when I realized he'd been the one who was pulling on me as we ran. "Yeah, shh, let's listen." We all got super quiet, listening for our footsteps in the dark. All we could hear were crickets and frogs and our own crazy panting. We were out of breath, bodies bent over on our knees. "We lost them," said Henry. "That was intense." "What happened to the flashlight?" "I dropped it." "How did you guys know?" said Jack. "We saw them before. They look like jerks." "You just rammed into them," I said to Amos. "I know, right?" laughed Amos. "He didn't even see it coming," said Miles. "He was like, 'Are you a freak too?' And then you were like, 'Bam!'" said Jack. "Bam!" said Amos, throwing a fake punch in the air. But after I tackled him, I was like, "Run, Amos, you schmuck. He's 10 times bigger than you, and I've got to stand up and start running as fast as I could." We all started laughing. I grabbed Augie and I was like, "Run," said Henry. "I didn't even know that was you pulling me," I answered. "That was wild," said Amos, shaking his head. "Totally wild." "Your lip's bleeding, dude." "I got a couple of good punches," answered Amos. I think they were 7th graders. They were huge. "Losers," Henry shouted really loudly, but we were all shushed him. We listened for a second to make sure that no one heard him. "Where are we? I can't even see the screen." "I think we're in cornfields," answered Henry. "Duh, we're in cornfields," said Miles, pushing a corn stalk at Henry. "Okay, I know exactly where we are," said Amos. "We have to go back this direction. It'll take us to the other side of the field." "Yo, dudes," said Jack, hand high in the air. "That was really cool of you guys to come back for us." "Really cool. Thanks." "No problem," answered Amos, high-fiving Jack, and then Miles and Henry high-fived him too. "Yeah, dudes, thanks," I said, holding up one of my palms like Jack had. I wasn't sure if they would high-five me too. Amos looked at me and nodded. "It was cool how you stood your ground, little dude." "Yeah, Augie," said Miles, high-fiving me too. "You were like, 'We're littler than you guys.'" I didn't know what else to say, I laughed. "Very cool," said Henry. "Sorry I ripped your sweatshirt." I looked down. At my sweatshirt was completely torn in the middle. One sleeve was ripped off, and the other was so stretched out it was hanging to my knees. "Your elbow's bleeding," said Jack. Yeah, I shrugged. It was starting to hurt a lot. "You okay?" said Jack, seeing my face. I nodded. Suddenly I felt like crying, and I was really trying hard not to do that. "Wait, your hearing aids are gone," said Jack. "What?" I yelled, touching one of my ears. The hearing aid band was definitely gone. That's what I felt like when I was underwater. "Oh no," I said, and that's when I couldn't hold it in anymore. Everything that just happened kind of hit me at once, and I couldn't help but start to cry. Like big crying, what Mom would call the waterworks. I was so embarrassed I hid my face in my arm, but I couldn't stop the tears from coming. "You're okay, dude. It's all right," they said. "You're one brave little dude, you know that?" said Amos, putting his arm around my shoulders. And when I kept crying, he put both of his arms around me like Dad would have done. The Emperor's Guard. We backtracked through the grass for a good 10 minutes to see if we can find my hearing aids, but it was too dark. We literally had to hold onto each other's shirts to walk in a single file so we wouldn't trip over each other. "This is hopeless," said Henry. "They could be anywhere." "Maybe we could come back with a flashlight," answered Amos. "No, it's okay," I said. "Let's just go back." "Thanks, though." We walked back towards the cornfields and then cut through them until the back of the giant screen came into view. Since it was facing away from us, we didn't get any light from the screen at all until we walked around the edges of the wood again. That's where we finally started to see this little light. There was no sign of 7th graders anywhere. "Where do you think they went?" said Jack. "Back to the food truck," said Amos. "They're probably thinking we're going to report them." "Are we?" asked Henry. They looked at me and I shook my head. "Okay," said Amos, "but little dude, don't walk around here alone anymore, okay? If you need to go somewhere, tell us and we'll go with you." All right, I nodded. As we got closer to the screen, I could hear high on a hill was a lonely goat herd and smelled the cotton candy from one of the concession stands near the food trucks. There were lots and lots of kids milling around the area, so I pulled what was left of my hoodie over my head and kept my face down, hands in pockets, as we made our way through the crowd. It had been a long time since I'd been without my hearing aids, and it felt like I was miles under the earth. It felt like that song Miranda used to sing to me, Ground Control to Major Tom. I did notice as I walked that Amos had stayed right next to me, and Jack was close on the other side of me, and Miles was in front of us, and Henry was in the back. They all surrounded me as we walked through the crowd of kids, like I had my own emperor's guard. Sleep. Then they came out of the narrow valley, and once she saw the reason, there stood Peter and Edmund and the rest of the army fighting desperately against the crowd of horrible creatures who they'd last seen. Only now in the daylight they looked even stranger and more evil and deformed. I stopped there. I'd been reading for over an hour, and sleep still didn't come. It was almost 2 a.m. Everyone else was asleep. I had my flashlight under the sleeping bag, and maybe the light was why I couldn't sleep, but I was too afraid to turn it off. When I got back to our section in front of the movie, no one seemed to notice we'd been gone. Mr. Tushman and Miss Rubin and Summer and all the rest of the kids were just watching the movie. They had no clue how bad what had almost happened to me and Jack. It's so weird how that can be. How you can have a night that's the worst night of your life, but to anyone else, it's just an ordinary night. Like on my calendar at home, I would mark this as being one of the most horrific days of my life. This and the day Daisy died. But for the rest of the world, it was just an ordinary day. Or maybe it was a good day. Maybe even someone won the lottery today. Amos, Miles, and Henry brought me and Jack over to where we'd been sitting before, with Summer and Maya and Reed, and then we went and sat to where they had been sitting before, Mena and Savannah and their group. In a way, everything was exactly how it had been before we left, looking for the toilets. The sky was the same, the movie was the same, everyone's faces were the same, mine was the same. But something was different. Something had changed. I could see Amos and Miles and Henry telling their group what just happened. I knew they were talking about it because they kept looking over at me while they were talking. Even though the movie was still playing, people were whispering about it in the dark. News like that spread fast. It was what everyone was talking about on the bus ride back to the cabin. All the girls, even girls I didn't know very well, were asking me if I was okay. The boys were all talking about getting revenge on the group of 7th grade jerks, trying to figure out what school they were from. I wasn't planning on telling the teachers about any of what happened, but they found out anyways. Maybe it was the torn sweatshirt or the bloody elbow, or maybe it was the teachers hear everything. When we got back to camp, Mr. Tushman took me to the first aid office, and while I was getting my elbow cleaned and bandaged up by the camp nurse, Mr. Tushman and the camp director were in the room next to me talking with Amos and Jack and Henry and Miles, trying to get a description of the troublemakers. When he asked me about them a little later, I said I couldn't remember their faces, which wasn't true. It's their faces I kept seeing every time I closed my eyes to sleep. The look of total horror on the girl's face when she first saw me. The way the kid with the flashlight, Eddie, looked at me as he talked to me, like he hated me. Like a lamb to slaughter. I remember Dad saying that years ago, but tonight, I think I finally remembered what he meant. Aftermath. Mom was waiting for me in the front of the school along with the other parents when the buses arrived. Mr. Tushman told them on the bus ride home that they had called my parents to tell them about the situation the night before. He said the camp director and several counselors were looking for a hearing aid in the morning while they all went swimming in the lake, but they couldn't find it anywhere. Broarwood would reimburse us the cost for the hearing aids, he said. They felt bad about what happened. I wonder if Eddie had taken my hearing aids with him as a souvenir, something to remember me by. Mom gave me a tight hug when I got off the bus, but she didn't slam me with questions like I thought she would. Her hug felt good, and I didn't shake it off like some of the other kids were doing with their parents' hugs. The bus driver started unloading our duffel bags, and I went to find mine while Mom and Mr. Tushman talked over. As I rolled my bag toward her, a lot of kids who don't usually say anything to me were nodding hello or patting my back as I walked by them. Ready? Mom said as she saw me. She took my duffel bag, and I didn't even try to hold on to it. I was fine with her carrying it. If she wanted, she could carry me on her shoulders. I would have been fine with that too, to be truthful. As we started to walk away, Mr. Tushman gave me a look. A quick, tight hug, but didn't say anything. Mom and I didn't talk much on the way home, and we got to the front stoop. I automatically looked at the front bay window because I had forgotten for a second that Daisy wasn't going to be there like always, perched on the sofa with her front paws on the windowsill. It made me kind of sad. As soon as Mom dropped the duffel bag and wrapped her arms around me, she kissed me then on my head and on my face and was breathing me in. It's okay, Mom, I'm fine. I know you are, she said. I missed you so much, Augie. I could tell she wanted to say a lot of other things, but she was stopping herself. Are you hungry? She said. Starving. Can I have a grilled cheese? Of course, she answered, and started immediately making the sandwich. Where's Via? I asked. She's coming home with Dad today. Boy, did she miss you, Augie, Mom said. Yeah? She would have liked the nature reserve. You know what movie they played? The Sound of Music. You'll have to tell her that. So, do you want to hear about the bad or the good part first? I asked a few minutes, leaning my head on my hand. Whatever you want to talk about, she said. Well, except for the last night. I had an awesome time, I said. I mean, it was just awesome. That's why I'm so bummed. I feel like I ruined their whole trip. No, sweetie, don't let them do that to you. You were there for more than 48 hours, and that awful part lasted 1 hour. Don't let them take that away from you. I know, I nodded. Did Mr. Tushman tell you about the hearing aids? Yes, he called us this morning. Is Dad mad because they're so expensive? Oh my gosh, of course not, Augie. He just wanted to know that you are all right. That's what matters to us. And you don't lose things. Thugs ruin your trip. And you don't let them ruin anything else. I kind of laughed at the word she said, thugs. What? She said. Thugs, I teased her. That's kind of an old-fashioned word. Okay. Jerks, morons, she said, flipping over her sandwich in the pan. Whatever you want to call them. If I saw them on the street, I would... She shook her head. They were pretty big, Mom, I smiled. 7th graders, I think. She shook her head. 7th graders? Mr. Tushman didn't tell me that. Oh, goodness. Did he tell you how Jack stood up for me? I said. And Amos was like, bam! He rammed right into the leader. They both crashed into the ground like a real fight. It was pretty awesome. He told us there was a fight, but she, looking at her eyebrows raised, I'm just so grateful you and Amos and Jack are fine. When I think about what could have happened, she said. My hoodie is totally shredded. Well, that can be replaced, she answered. Can I have chocolate milk, please? I started devouring the sandwich. Oh, can you do it that special way you make it with the froth? How did you and Jack end up in the edge of the woods in the first place? She said, pouring the chocolate milk in a glass. Jack had to go to the bathroom, I answered, my mouth full. And as I was talking, she spooned the chocolate powder and started rolling a small whisk between her palms really fast. But there wasn't a huge line. There was a huge line. He didn't want to wait. So we went to the woods to pee. She looked up at me like when she was whisking. I think she was thinking we shouldn't have done that. The chocolate milk was in the glass now. That looks good. Thanks, Mom. And then what happened, she said, putting the glass in front of me. I took a long drink of the chocolate milk. Is it okay if we don't talk about it right now anymore? Okay. I promise I'll tell you about it later when Dad and Via come home. I'll tell you every detail. I just don't want to have to tell this story over and over. I finished my sandwich in more than 2 bites and gulped down the rest of the chocolate milk. Wow, you practically inhaled that sandwich. Do you want another one? She said. I shook my head and wiped my mouth on the back of my hand. Mom, am I always going to have to worry about jerks like that? Like when I grow up? Is it always going to be like this? She didn't answer right away, but took my plate and glass and put them in the sink. There are always going to be jerks in this world, Augie, she said, looking at me. But I really believe, and Daddy really believes, that there are more good people on this earth than bad. and the good people watch out for each other and take care. Just like Jack was there for you, and Amos, and those other kids. Oh yeah, Miles and Henry, I answered. They were awesome. It's weird because Miles and Henry haven't even been really nice to me at all during this school year. Sometimes people surprise us, she said, rubbing the top of my head. I guess. I'm really tired. Can I take a nap, Mom? You should. Thanks for leaving me, Baboo, by the way. You got my note? She smiled. I slept with him both nights. She was about to say something else when her cell phone rang, and she answered it. She started beaming as she listened. Oh my goodness, really? What kind? She said excitedly. Yep, he's right here. He was just about to take a nap. Want to say hi? Okay, we'll see you in 2 minutes. She clicked it off. That was Dad, she said excitedly. He and Via are just down the block. He's not at work? I said. He left early because he couldn't wait to see you, she said. So don't take a nap just quite yet. 5 seconds later, Dad and Via came through the door. I ran into Dad's arms and he picked me up and spun me around and kissed me. He didn't let me go for a full minute until I said, Dad, it's okay. And then it was Via's turn, and she hugged me all over and kissed me like she used to when she was little. It wasn't until she stopped that I noticed a big white cardboard box they had brought in with them. What's that? I said. Open it, said Dad, smiling, and he and Mom looked at each other like they knew a secret. Come on, said Via. I opened the box, and inside was the cutest little puppy I'd ever seen in my life. It was black and furry, and with a pointy little snout and bright black eyes and small ears that flopped down.